Fan translations are always a treat. You get to play a new game for an old console. It can be hard to keep up with all the new translation projects, so I'd like to showcase some of the more recent ones. I tried each of them out for a bit, and I'd like to give you my first impressions. The link to every patch will be in the description. I didn't really know how to organize this video, so I figured we'd just go from oldest console to newest. That means the first game on the list is Rampart. This game was translated by Wish. Rampart was originally an arcade game where you build a base and defend with cannons. While there was an NES version released officially by the original developer Atari, going under the name Tengen, this is for the Famicom version, which was developed by Konami. It's an interesting game since you have two phases, the first being one where you fight off tanks and ships using your base, and the second where you use Tetris-like pieces to expand your fort, with you eventually adding more cannons. It's simple, but then again it's based on an arcade game, so there's not much to expect. Dai Kaijuu Deburas, or as it was translated, Giant Monster Flabber, is a strategy game for the NES. This one was brought to you by Black Paladin. The main goal in each stage is to try to get the egg to the checkpoint before Flabber destroys it. You have planes, helicopters, ships, tanks, and even rocket launchers at your disposal to stop Flabber. While you won't be able to kill him, you can at least slow down his movement. Unfortunately, to move the egg carrier, you have to roll a dice. This really slows down the pace of the game if, like me, you keep getting 2s every single roll. I really wouldn't recommend this unless you're a hardcore kaiju fan, but I do appreciate the translation effort. Next is over to the PC Engine for Gekibo, Gekisha Boy. This one was translated by Leighton Lowe's2 and is probably the strangest game on the list. You're a photography student whose parents suddenly die. You want to quit school, but the dean offers you a test to graduate if you take photos of what he wants. You walk around trying to snap the perfect shot of interesting things, be it DeLoreans, Marilyn Monroe impersonators, aliens among us, or girls falling down to show their panties. While it's frustrating because you essentially need to memorize where these points of interest are for each level, you never know what's going to happen next. If you plan on enjoying this game, make sure you're getting the latest translation patch, version 1.0. I tried version 0.99 on my setup and it didn't work. Now we head to the Game Boy for Yu-Gi-Oh! Monster Capsule GB, translated by Bonely. This is a tactical RPG where you control monsters based off of Yu-Gi-Oh! Cards. Each monster capsule has its own movement and attack pattern that makes them special. You can get new monster capsules by spending star chips, which are won from beating opponents, at the capsule machines. I was really disappointed that I couldn't move all my units on my turn, it's just one at a time. I'm also not a huge Yu-Gi-Oh! Fan, but if you are, maybe give this one a try. The next translation got a lot of press when it came out due to using artificial intelligence. Apparently Zarby89 used DeepL and ChatGPT, and I have to say it shows. There are a lot of grammatical errors. While I commend the translation effort, I wish a human would have gone over the text to smooth out some of the rough edges. This game is also notorious for being kusoge in Japan. While the battle system is serviceable enough, the encounter rate is really high and the enemies are really hard. I died to the second one that I ran into. Also, the evasion rate is super high, drawing out battles even more. The sprite work also feels really generic, especially when you stack it up against other early SNES RPGs like Final Fantasy IV. Still, I hope the technology that facilitated this translation keeps getting improved on in the future. Super Ninjacon is a co-op platformer game starring two ninjas translated by Diogo Ribeiro. You play one, possibly two ninjas that are out to save the princess. You can use shuriken to defeat enemies, but as you beat bosses you get more and more equipment. Platforming is tight to say the least, and I had a real rough time reaching my goal. But it is nice to have another co-op game on the Super Nintendo, especially one that's kind of cutesy. Gokujo Parodius, now known as Fantastic Parodius, pursuing former glory, is the third game in Konami's parody shooter series, Parodius. This one was translated by Blizz. If you played Parodius before, then you know what to expect. If you haven't, it's just a fever dream. You can choose between 11 characters, all from various Konami games such as Goemon, Oopa from Biomiracle Boket Oopa, Kid D from Kid Dracula, a bunny girl, a stickman, it's crazy. For this video I was trying out Goemon, and I lost it when he started promoting his next game on a microphone. If you're a shooter fan, you definitely gotta try this one out. The next game is Broke for the Saturn, which was translated by Pliskin on Twitter. This game has gained a bit of notoriety due to being a roguelike for the PS1, but the original release was for the Sega Saturn. We never got either version in the West. Instead, we'd have to wait for the PlayStation 2 and Wii remake several years later. Also, it turns out that a port for the Switch was recently released, but again, only in Japan. The PS1 version changes how floors are generated, added a new vendor, generally decreased the difficulty, and added some extra music. As an amnesiac protagonist, you set out in a bleak post-apocalyptic world. There's some monsters called Grotesque and some angels. You can walk around town to talk to some random weird people, and eventually this archangel guy gives you a gun and tells you to go to the bottom of the tower. It seems like there's a bunch of lore, but I suspect you'll have to keep talking to NPCs to figure it all out. The gameplay is pretty straightforward. You move around using tank controls. One button opens up the menu where you equip stuff, one button attacks, and another shows the mini-map. It's a roguelike, so what gear you get and the layout of the floor is random. You just gotta get to the bottom of the tower and keep fighting monsters. I'm definitely looking forward to playing more of this one, but I'll probably stick to the Saturn version since I suspect most will be playing the PlayStation version. Since we're done with the Saturn, the next console is indeed the PlayStation 1. And the first game is Ginga Ojo-sama Densetsu Yuna, Final Edition. This was translated to Tactical Adventure Galaxy Fraulein Yuna, Final Edition by Supper. The first two games in the series are also translated, but are available for the PC Engine. If you've never played one of these games, it's basically 90s shoujo anime to a T with a bit of fan service thrown in. And while the first two games were visual novels, this game, which is a remake of the third game, is a tactical RPG. The genre switch is also really interesting because it was developed not only by Hudson, but also by Red, who's most well known for the Sakura Wars series. In my small sampling, I didn't really have anything to complain about, except for one girl who says her voice line with all the speed of a sloth. If you're in the mood for 90s anime tactical RPG action, definitely give this one a go. The next game is also a tactical RPG for the PlayStation 1. However, Escaform is a lot more of a hard sci-fi setting. Escaform was recently translated by Garrett Greenwald, who goes by El Camino Oscuro on Twitter. To me, this game looks pretty good, and the battle system is pretty interesting. Each character has a pool of action points that can be spent on movement or action. However, if you leave action points unused, they get turned into extra points that act as armor. So, going all out and moving and using 3 attacks will leave you extremely vulnerable. Another weird note is that this game is known for having a bunch of rooms with unique toilets. Bathroom obsession aside, I'm really looking forward to doing a full playthrough of this one. For a while, I've been following this Twitter account called PC98box, where I've been treated to some of the most fantastic pixel art that I've ever seen. So I was very excited to learn that there was an English translation made for the first Mado Monogatari on the PC98, done by Yugi. The Mado Monogatari series was never released outside of Japan, but in its homeland, it's known for being a dungeon crawler with a very, very cute aesthetic. However, this particular entry is known for not having cute monsters. And it's kind of jarring to see Arle all wide-eyed and kawaii go up against a realistic werewolf or a skeleton, but that's the charm. I really hope this inspires more translation for this platform that's relatively unknown in the West. Next up is the Dreamcast, and a real treat, SNK's offbeat rhythm game, Cool Cool Tune. This game was translated by Derek Pascarella on Twitter, who's been really active in the Dreamcast translation scene as of late. Seriously, if you're a fan of the console, make sure to check what Derek and his team have been working on. Anyways, Cool Cool Tune is a rhythm game with a great aesthetic. It never left Japan, although a European release was rumored to be in the works before it got cancelled. You choose either a boy or a girl to get sucked into the cartoon world. Each song sees you moving a control stick in a direction and pressing a button. Rhythm games aren't really my thing, but this was a joy to check out. Another recent translation, also by Derek Pascarella, is Nakaruru, The Gift She Gave Me. It's a visual novel focusing on Nakaruru from SNK's fighting game, Samurai Showdown. You don't play as Nakaruru, but instead an orphan named Mikado, who becomes Nakaruru's apprentice. Honestly, this one might not really be for people who aren't big fans of Nakaruru, but it's still great to have another game to play. Another visual novel that recently got translated is the PlayStation Portable version of Neon Genesis Evangelion Girlfriend of Steel. This project was done by Mugi. You play as Mana Kirishima, another transfer student who for some reason is really into Shinji. It's cool to see a game developed by Gainax and to check out more of Evangelion. Because it's the same company as the animation studio, all of the images and sprites fit in perfectly. If you're wanting more of this series, fortunately Mugi has also translated the second game as well. And that about wraps it up for all the new translations that I'm aware of. Have I missed anything? Please let me know down in the comments. If you want to see me play retro games, I live stream on Twitch. Otherwise, I'll see you later. Bye!